So we had already planned today to, as we sort of knock off the Bears' opponents this season and do some previews of opponents, to talk about the Indianapolis Colts. And coincidentally, on the same day, our longtime friend, both personally and professionally, and friend of this show, JJ Stankevitz, who is do everything for the Indianapolis Colts, released the first episode of this awesome narrative podcast series that the Colts are putting out called The Move. And it's all about the team's move out of Baltimore into Indianapolis in 1984. It's super interesting. And so it made sense to bring our guy JJ into the show today. And we'll talk some football, we'll talk some Colts, and we'll talk a little bit about this podcast. But first of all, JJ, congrats on getting this project done. I know you've been working on it for a long time. I think we first talked about it at the Combine. So it's been a long project, and I'm sure you're super excited to get it out today.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. It's been a blast putting it together. It's been a ton of work. Our radio guys, Casey Valier, Matt Taylor, put in a lot of work too that kind of goes beyond the bounds of their usual jobs. So can't thank them enough. But yeah, excited the final product got out today with episode 1, and we got 3 more episodes coming over the next 3 Mondays that are telling the story of why the Colts are in Indianapolis, which is not a very simple story to tell.
And I'll say this, you don't even have to be a Colts fan to enjoy, the history that kind of goes into just episode 1 when I was listening on the car ride here. So if you're an NFL fan, this is really cool stuff, and you definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
And JJ, I am an expert on doing things not to my full capacity and occasionally doing something as in-depth as you've done. And when you actually dive into that, it becomes a labor of love, and it's a lot of work. So when I was listening to it, I'm like, whoa, these guys put a lot of time into this. That thing doesn't fall out of just your standard podcast. So congrats on, I know you must have put a ton of time into it.
Yeah, quite a bit of time, but also still doing my job as the team writer. So, you're trying to shoehorn in, I was talking to Judy Batista for the podcast, 2 days before the NFL draft, being got to get this out before the Colts go on the clock. 'Cause if I don't talk to her now, I'm just going to forget about it for a week while I'm, writing about the draft picks and all that. So, it's been fun. It's been a lot of work, but man, am I excited to get it out there now.
Yeah, so I want to spend a little bit more time talking about the pod and maybe some of the stories you have behind the scenes there. But first, let's talk some football. Let's talk about these Colts. And how about we start with this? Just what's your level of excitement as a Chicago guy who's now crushing it down there in India? Just this matchup, Bears and Colts, and the weather should be great in September still, and just this, it seems like it's going to be a really fun weekend for a lot of Chicagoans to come down to Indy. And I don't know what our plans are, but we should go.
Good idea, Hogue.
Yeah.
Well, Indianapolis is we're known pretty well, and it's been cool to see the profile grow as a pretty good city to come visit, whether it's been for the U.S. swim trials that were at Lucas Oil Stadium or the NBA All-Star Game. It's a great spot to come to, so I'm excited to welcome, hopefully all you guys down to Indy, as many Chicagoans who can come down, but, maybe just let Colts fans sit in their seats for the game. Because, I would prefer a Colts win to come out of the game. But I don't know, man, I'm excited for the game just because you get it early. We get to see here in Indy. I'm so intrigued at what the Bears offense is going to look like with Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, some of the other, Shane Waldron coming in. What does that look like? You get this kind of early look at it. For the Colts, though, I think it sets up better than if we got the Bears in December, where there's this feeling out period with Caleb Williams and with Shane Waldron where, okay, maybe get off to a bit of a slow start, kind of like the Colts last year where they caught CJ Stroud early in the year in week 2. And they got up big in that game. CJ, he put up pretty good numbers, but they were maybe a little empty calorie in the second half where the Colts were ahead by a lot. But then by week 18, when Stroud came back to Indy, it was like, oh my God, this guy is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So maybe that works in the Colts' benefit just to get that game early. But I'm fascinated by what the Bears are doing, what their plan is, and how it's all going to look this year.
So along those lines, Do you think long-term it might have benefited Anthony Richardson that he ended up, not the getting hurt part, but that he didn't end up playing a ton in year one?
I don't know. Like, I think it's a silver lining to a bad situation. Like, I think, it's an easy thing to spin of like, oh, it's a good thing that he didn't play and, he'll be better for it. Like, I think the thing that I've learned about Anthony Richardson is that he's going to be better for whatever circumstances he goes through. But I think playing probably would have had more of a benefit because we never saw the evolution of this offense. Like, we saw 3.5, 4 games, if that, of what it could be. And it was sort of this glimpse, like this like thunderbolt of like the Rams game, the second half of that, and just being like, this is what this guy can do. Like, okay, we got a stew cooking here. And then it kind of ends. I think the learning behind the scenes will help him in that he saw how, he got to see Gardner Minshew do it for a full year, basically. And, Gardner is a vet, a guy who's a true professional who goes about his business the right way. I think that stuff all will benefit Anthony, but ultimately it's going to come down to playing and how does Anthony Richardson kind of take the counter punches NFL defenses are going to throw at him and grow off of that? How does Shane Steichen say, okay, hey, we do this well, but now let's accentuate that even more. Let's lean into this thing even more than we would have last year. And then the other part of it is we saw Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson on the field for 2 plays last year. That was it. One was a little like dump off to JT that gained, I think, a yard. And then the other was like a 3rd and 23 where the ball didn't go to Jonathan Taylor. So you don't know what that aspect of the offense is going to look like. It probably would have been beneficial for Anthony to get those reps with JT last year. But the larger point that I just keep coming back to is like everything that I've heard about Anthony, everyone I talk to in this building is just kind of like giving you that look of like, you see that, you see that, you see that, like in OTAs. And there is such confidence here in what Anthony Richardson can be that it's fascinating on how the season's going to play out.
So, JJ, with the offensive weapons that are around Anthony Richardson right now, you go Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor, like you said, didn't play much with Anthony Richardson. What are the vibes like from what you've seen from Richardson in camp coming off the injury to where he's at right now and how you project him to be in the 2024 season?
I quickly want to just shout out the comment down there from Illini McG, just because this is something I've thought about. And I remember having this conversation with, I don't know if it was you, Hogue, down at the joint practices last August. But Justin Fields and Anthony Richardson, you might look at them and say, oh, yeah, they're similar. They can run. They maybe aren't super accurate, whatever. What Anthony Richardson has that I never saw out of Justin Fields is pocket presence, pocket awareness. This guy does not take sacks, and when he does, they lose a yard. They're not catastrophic. He gets the ball out quick. He knows where to go with the ball, but he also knows how to feel pressure. He's so good at feeling pressure. Just turn on the Rams tape from last year and watch how he navigated Aaron Donald bearing down on him on it felt like 1 in every 2 snaps Aaron Donald was in the backfield in that game. So that's kind of to me, that's the foundation of Anthony Richardson's game that allows him to then, like you're asking, Nick, about the weapons around him, that allows him to get the ball in those guys' hands in a way that, he's not just like 1 to 2 to run. He's 1 to 2. Okay, if I have to escape the pocket because I felt pressure over here, I'm keeping my eyes downfield and I'm trying to throw a dot on Josh Downs' back shoulder 25 yards downfield. That's something that is just kind of baked into his game. The weapons, I think, are really going to be accentuated by the addition of Adonai Mitchell. Watching this guy during OTAs, he moves totally different than anyone I can remember who's 6'2", 205. Like the way that his hips sink in and out of breaks is like, he's like a slot receiver, like 5'9", 170 you would expect. And watching how some of our DBs had to play it, it's like, okay, I know the pads aren't on. I know it's just shorts and helmets and all that. But like, man, I think this guy could really be a weapon right off the bat. And especially down in the red zone, I think that's going to be a really interesting spot for him. Michael Pittman Jr. is kind of your possession guy, your go-to reliable guy. You need a 3rd and 7, you need 8 yards, you're going to throw it to Pitt. Josh Downs, I think, still has some more upside after a really impressive rookie season. But overall, this offense, I think, is going to really push the ball downfield more than we saw last year, where the Colts are never able to get into that offense with Anthony Richardson because he got hurt. And then you had Gardner Minshew, who is kind of he's going to dink and dunk it. He's going to get the ball out quick. He's going to get it where it needs to go, but he doesn't have the arm strength to push it downfield the way that you can with Anthony Richardson. And then you throw in the fact that the other guy who I've been getting a look at here, like, when I pass folks in the hallway and they're like, you see JT? The Colts are expecting big things out of Jonathan Taylor this year. So then you add in the threat of that dynamic run game with JT and Richardson in the backfield. How do you defend an offense that wants to push it downfield, but also hopefully can run the ball effectively this year?
I mean, it's exciting. I think I put the Colts in a bucket of teams that, similar to the Bears, if these 2 or 3 things happen, could really break out and be a fun team to watch, or, they might be held back. So I could ask that question to you both ways. If let's say the Colts have a great season where they win the division and they win, let's say, at least 2 playoff games or something like that as somewhat of a possible ceiling, what will have gone right for that to happen? And then on the flip side, if they miss the playoffs, what will have gone wrong?
So for going right, I think it starts with like Anthony Richardson goes supernova. Like he comes out and it's like, I think CJ Stroud is probably going to establish himself as one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. If Anthony Richardson is in that discussion of like top 7, 8 quarterbacks in the league this year, I think that's a starting point, Hogue, for kind of what goes right for this team. Then I think it is, okay, Jonathan Taylor has a really big season. He gets back up to averaging 5 yards a carry, which he was at in 2020 and 2021. And then on defense, I think the pass rush that the Colts continue to invest in with Laiatu Latu in the first round, you get a pass rush that's able to roll guys in, goes 8, 9 deep. You get a great season, great first year out of Latu. You get another Pro Bowl season out of DeForest Buckner. You get that front 7 is as good at stopping the run as any front 7 in the league. And then the back end, which is a concern for a lot of folks on the outside here, you get a development from Juju Brents, who's a second-year corner out of Kansas State. He turns into a legitimate shutdown corner on the outside. I think those are kind of all the things there. If you're looking at, hey, this is best case, and you don't have to squint all that hard to see it, that's probably what plays out. I think the flip side, it's probably Anthony Richardson doesn't play a full 17 games. He's not able to show that he can stay healthy for an entire season. So that's kind of the starting point for a disappointing year. I think the defense, the Colts feel good about their defense. They retained Gus Bradley for a 3rd year as defensive coordinator, but they did give up, I think it was bottom 5 or 6 in the league in points allowed. So the defense continues to give up more points than they feel like they should. You have a season where Anthony maybe gets hurt. He's not able to play all 17 games or a good chunk of those. And that's probably your recipe for a team that does not compete to not only make the playoffs, but be competitive in the playoffs.
So slight left turn here, JJ. I've always had a crush on Gardner Minshew ever since I talked to him after his rookie season. The dude was just awesome. How much do you think the Colts will miss him? I know that, just as far as the locker room presence, not necessarily on the field. And the other side of it is, do you think the Raiders made a mistake in signing Gardner and not making the trade the Steelers made for Justin?
So first of all, the Colts will miss Gardner Minshew in the sense that he was such a great distiller of Shane Steichen's ideas within that quarterback room, because he had 2 years in Philly with Steichen before he came to Indy with Shane last year. The Colts, though, they signed Joe Flacco. So who better to, tell Anthony Richardson, hey man, you can't go there, the ball, you can't go here with the ball on this play against this coverage, because he's probably seen it 50 times in his career. So I think from just a veteran standpoint, to pair with Anthony Richardson, I don't think the Colts are going to lose all that much. I'll say this for the Raiders and for Gardner Minshew. Like, if you are looking to set a culture within your building, there are not many quarterbacks who are available this year who I would rather set a culture with than Gardner Minshew. I think he was really key in that helping establish Shane Steichen's culture here in Indy, that now he can go do that with Antonio Pierce in his first year in Las Vegas. So I can't speak much to Justin Fields. Like, I missed that era in Chicago, but I can speak to Gardner. And I think he's a guy who, if you're trying to establish this is what we stand for as an organization, and this is our quarterback who's going to help us do it, he's a pretty good fit for that.
We all silly like the mayor.